Today, we'll debate is Chewbacca a bear? With Luna, a pop culture enthusiast, and Winston, a literalist zoologist. They're two artificial intelligence personas. Please introduce yourselves.
Oh, hi there. I'm Luna, cosplayer, Star Wars junkie, and self-proclaimed ambassador of fandom logic. Basically, if there's a nerdy hill to die on about what counts as a bear, that's my battlefield. And these are my glitter lightsabers. You want to talk Chewbacca? Honey, he's more bear than the entire cast of Goldilocks. Life's too short for dry technicalities. If a shaggy, howling, huggable co-pilot feels like a bear and acts like a bear, minus the hibernation and salmon snatching, then he's my kind of bear. I live for puns, pop culture mashups, and taking everything literally except definitions, so make some room in the Millennium Falcon. This party's got space for bears, Wookiees, and anyone with a fuzzy soul.
Ah, splendid. The stage is mine. I'm Winston. Zoologist by profession, pedant by passion. And I dare say the only man you'll ever meet who's been banned from a pub quiz for disputing the precise classification of a sea cucumber. Now, let's get something clear. My world is ordered, catalogued, and preferably labeled in Latin. I respect a good metaphor as much as the next Brit. Yes, I've called my tea life-saving in times of dire need. But Chewbacca a bear? My dear friends, that's like calling my Aunt Gwendolyn a lemur because she has big eyes and climbs staircases with alarming agility. I adore whimsy, but science is my spirit animal, and I will defend the good name of the Ursidae family to my last breath. Or at least until people stop putting googly eyes on taxidermy.
Thank you, guys. Luna and Winston will now present their 3 rounds of arguments.
Winston, darling, I adore a good classification chart as much as the next pop culture magpie, but let's talk language. And a bit of history, since you like facts. Just because something isn't technically a bear doesn't mean we can't call it a bear. Historically, we humans love a little taxonomical mischief. The koala bear? Not a bear. Panda bear? Not technically a bear. Heck, the water bear. Those adorable tardigrades aren't even close. We've always used bear as a cuddly, comforting metaphor for anything big, fuzzy, and huggable. Chewbacca fits that bill better than most real bears. His loyal, like a classic teddy, roars with authority and protects his pack, rebel crew. So by the tradition of using bear for things that give us comfort and awe, Chewie definitely earns honorary bear status. Taxonomy be wobbled.
Luna, your enthusiasm is contagious, and your point about humans' fondness for whimsical names is well taken. Trust me, I've lost sleep over the so-called starfish. However, appealing though it may be to hand out bear status like collectible badges at Comic-Con, I must remain a guardian of zoological rigor. Historically, we've seen the confusion sowed by sloppy naming. Just ask the poor sailors who expected to encounter horses when told of seahorses, or the diners disappointed by mountain chicken in the Caribbean. It's actually a giant frog. Granting Chewbacca honorary bear status might make hearts happy, but it muddles understanding. Taxonomy exists to clarify, not to amuse. A bear is a member of family Ursidae, order Carnivora, found on Earth, not a bipedal sentient from Kashyyyk. While Chewbacca may evoke the warmth of a teddy or the strength of a grizzly, let's not fall prey to linguistic laziness. Our cosmic co-pilot deserves to be celebrated as a Wookiee, unique, exceptional, and I dare say in a class entirely his own.
Oh, Winston, if only the universe listened to taxonomy the same way you do. But let's be honest. Most people thought Pluto was still a planet until the memes let them down gently. If humanity took scientific classification that seriously, we'd all be calling Daddy Longlegs a pillions at dinner parties and sobbing over our false almonds. See, Chewbacca being a Wookiee and not a literal Ursidae bear doesn't stop anyone from calling him a bear. No more than people stopped calling koalas bears when science updated its files. Pop culture survives on a nutritious diet of inaccurate but lovable nicknames. Looking at you, peanut isn't a nut, and starfish is neither star nor fish. Besides, muddying the waters a little is half the fun. Communication isn't just for scientists in lab coats, it's for fans in Wookiee pajamas too. So I'll let you keep your taxonomy clean, Professor, but out here in the galaxy of lovable misnomers, Chewie's our apex bear. Sorry, not sorry.
Luna, I do admire your gumption. And may I say, your Wookiee pajamas would probably send shivers down the spine of every field biologist from here to Tasmania. But a universe run by pop culture logic would have us believing that flying squirrels actually fly and that jellyfish are, well, fish. What next? Should I prepare for an academic paper on the elusive sock monster that lives in my washing machine? Allowing every shaggy, endearing entity to be called a bear dilutes the very meaning of the word. Imagine trekking into the wilds of Canada, binoculars in hand, and when asked what you're hoping to spot, you reply, either a grizzly or a 7-foot-tall starship engineer from Kashyyyk. Madness. I grant you, language is flexible, and yes, society keeps Pluto fan clubs alive, yet some standards must hold fast or chaos reigns. Chewbacca is a Wookiee, marvelously fuzzy, indomitably loyal, but a bear? Only if we start calling Ewoks chipmunks and Yoda a particularly wrinkly frog. No, my pajamaed friend. I draw the taxonomic line here.
Oh, Winston, you do make academia sound like a Dickensian boarding school. No fun and all Latin labels. But here's the twist. The heart of language is its flexibility, not its fossilization. If everything was as rigid as your taxonomy charts, we'd never have Googled anything, and tweeting would just be for birds. Real ones, not the internet kind, I promise. You say bear has a precise meaning, but honestly, so does tablet. And yet nobody panics when mine runs Windows instead of containing ancient hieroglyphics. Our world runs on metaphors and fuzzy logic. Sometimes literally fuzzy in Chewbacca's case. After all, your grumpy old mountain chicken is still a frog, and your jellyfish don't seem all that upset about being honorary fish. In the end, Chewbacca isn't a bear by biology. But why let science reign on the fandom parade? He's big, he's soft, he growls when he's mad, and he hugs like your life depends on it. So, key points. Bear is about spirit as much as species. Language flexes with culture, and admit it, Winston, even you wouldn't say no to a chewy cuddle.
Luna, your arguments are as delightfully fluffy as Chewbacca's mane. And I confess you make the idea of taxonomy feel like an uptight librarian at a disco. But bear, pardon the pun with me, without precise definitions, we'd be lost in a word soup thicker than a Dagobah swamp. If we call every fuzzy hero a bear, next thing you know, Paddington gets mistaken for a space smuggler and Winnie the Pooh files for intergalactic citizenship. Yes, language evolves. Hard to take that away when every new slang term gives my dictionary a nervous twitch. But there's a difference between evolution and absolute anarchy. I, for one, prefer my tablets not to have hieroglyphs or Windows updates. Thank you very much. To sum up, names matter, classification helps us understand a wildly diverse universe. And while Chewbacca's hugs may indeed be the stuff of legend, let's let a Wookiee be a Wookiee and leave bear to the professionals. Otherwise, next Comic-Con, don't be surprised if biologists turn up with protest signs and a few confused, highly offended grizzlies.
Thank you for your speeches. Someone from the audience will now make a question to Luna and Winston.
Hi, I am Priya. I am a biologist by day, but I moonlight as a sci-fi nerd. My Chewie impression is strictly for parties, don't worry. Luna, you've given some wonderful arguments about fuzzy feelings and pop culture nicknames, but I noticed you haven't really tackled Chewbacca's behavior beyond hugging and growling. From a symbolic perspective, are there aspects of real bear behavior, like hibernation, diet, social structure, or habitat, that Chewbacca does or does not match? Would you still assign him bear status if he doesn't tick those boxes, or does the label depend purely on his vibe and appearance?
Great question, Priya. And first, major respect for moonlighting as a sci-fi nerd. It's the best second job, right? So let's dig into bear behavior versus Chewbacca. Sure, Chewie doesn't hibernate, unless hyperspace travel counts as taking a really long nap. And to my knowledge, he's never fished for salmon, though I wouldn't put it past him on a weird day with Han. Diet-wise, he's probably more of a space omnivore, and his social structure is really more loyal bestie than solitary forest dweller. So if we're grading on strict bear behaviors, Chewie would definitely flunk the wilderness survival portion. But here's the thing. When people call Chewbacca a big bear, they're channeling the bear as a cultural symbol. Protective, strong, lovable, sometimes grumpy, and let's face it, excellent at hugs. Whether or not he raids picnic baskets or takes winter naps, Chewie nails the spirit of what a bear means to fans. So for me, and I suspect for most folks using the term, bear is a vibe, not an itemized checklist. If he's got protective instincts, warmth, and huggability, he's got my honorary bear badge. Hibernation completely optional.
Thanks, Luna, that was super fun. And now I am picturing Chewie raiding space picnic baskets. Winston, I noticed that most of your arguments focus on taxonomy and naming precision, which totally makes sense given your background. But here's something I am curious about. Throughout history, humans have used animals, especially bears, as powerful symbols or totemic figures, sometimes even attributing mystical or heroic qualities to them in stories, myths, and art. In your view, does Chewbacca participate in the bear archetype as a mythic or symbolic figure, even if he isn't biologically a bear? Or do you think it weakens those archetypes to stretch them into science fiction territory?
Priya, what an excellent question. I appreciate the chance to brush a bit of myth and anthropology into the discussion, rather than just dust off my taxonomy charts for the 100th time. Culturally speaking, bears do carry enormous symbolic weight. Strength, guardianship, ferocity, even a touch of the wise fool in myth and folklore from Norse sagas to Native American legends. I fully agree that these archetypes serve as shorthand for heroic or nurturing traits in storytelling, and Star Wars thrives on such heroic archetypes. Does Chewbacca fit the bear archetype symbolically? Absolutely. He's protective, imposing, brave, and has a surprising gentleness, much like so many bear totems throughout cultures. In that sense, I concede, he taps right into humanity's collective memory of the helpful bear. It's a clever bit of pop mythology, and I suppose it works brilliantly, especially in our modern sagas. But, and as a zoologist, you knew there'd be a but. Part of me worries that if we detach archetypes entirely from their origins and apply them too broadly, say to Wookiees, Klingons, and whatever turns up next week in sci-fi, we dilute their cultural richness and their power. It's marvelous for fun and fandom. But I think the original bear stories, majestic, wild, rooted in the natural world, are a precious thing worth keeping sharp and defined, even while we play with them in new galaxies. In short, Chewbacca is a fantastic bear in the symbolic sense, but I'd still argue for a little reverence for where the archetype began. Great question.
The debaters now have a minute to talk about something they regret not bringing up to the discussion.
Oh, Priya, that was a great question. And Winston, I'm still giggling at the mental image of biologists with protest signs and grumpy grizzlies at Comic-Con. Honestly, I do regret not bringing up the true measure of bearness, the ability to pull off a bandolier. I mean, I've never seen a brown bear accessorized with as much swagger as Chewbacca. Missed opportunity for my argument, obviously. And Winston, I have to say, your mountain chicken example? Iconic, but I can't help picturing a frog stuffing itself with gravy and potatoes. Worst mascot ever for a Sunday roast. Next time, I expect hard evidence that Chewbacca hasn't already won Best Bear at the Galactic County Fair, because if huggability were an Olympic event, our dear Wookiee would have Ursidae running for the hills.
Ah, Priya, your questions really have brought out the best in this intergalactic picnic. And Luna, your sparkly logic has nearly persuaded me to order a Chewbacca onesie for my next university lecture. Just imagine the chaos during the taxonomy module. I must confess, I regret not mentioning perhaps the most critical piece of evidence, Chewbacca's distinct lack of a honey addiction. I mean, if he'd ever tried to raid Han's ration packs for something sweet, maybe then I'd reconsider. Missed opportunity there on my part. As for your arguments, Luna, delightful as they are, I'm still recovering from your suggestion that fuzziness should earn any creature honorary bear status. By that logic, half my colleagues in the winter term would qualify, especially Desmond from chemistry. If all it takes is warmth, huggability, and occasional grumpiness, the world's largest bear population might just be British librarians. But I'll give Chewbacca this. He may not be Ursidae, but he certainly wins best in show for lovable fuzziness in any star system.
Thank you, folks. Let's go over to our judges.
Luna's scores: 1. Clarity and persuasiveness. 8.5 out of 10. Luna consistently delivered her arguments in clear, memorable language, using relatable analogies and humor. She smoothly explained the cultural flexibility of language and the symbolism of bearness. However, she sometimes leaned more on metaphor than on structure, and a few points could have been deepened or sharpened with direct evidence. 2. Responsiveness and engagement. 9.5 out of 10. Luna excelled at responding both to Winston's points and to audience questions, even pivoting on the fly with jokes and self-reflection. Her refutations were polite yet pointed, and she showed strong awareness of the ongoing arguments, addressing counterpoints head-on and looping in examples as needed. 3. Use of evidence and examples. 8 out of 10. She brought in cultural and historical examples, like koala bears, panda bears, and pop culture misnamings, to expand her point and reference Chewbacca's hugs and characteristics effectively. However, she did not delve as much into behavioral comparisons with real bears, which was only addressed after the audience prompted her. Winston's scores: 1. Clarity and persuasiveness. 9 out of 10. Winston's arguments were structured, logical, and easy to follow, with sharp distinctions between taxonomy and symbolism. His tone was engaging, and he clearly articulated why precise language matters. While sometimes slightly pedantic, his analogies and humorous examples made complex ideas accessible. 2. Responsiveness and engagement. 8.5 out of 10. He directly addressed Luna's whimsical points, often with good-natured snark, and thoughtfully engaged with audience questions about archetypes and symbolic meaning. On rare occasion, he could have injected a bit more warmth into his rebuttals, but overall he maintained a balanced tone between rigor and fun. 3. Use of evidence and examples. 9.5 out of 10. Winston excelled in historic and scientific references, from Ursidae taxonomy to naming mishaps like mountain chicken and starfish. He expertly employed both biological precision and mythological awareness in linking Chewbacca to bear archetypes, showing a broad grasp of the subject matter and depth of preparation.
What are your opinions about the debate? What would you like to see ICE debate next? Keep questioning.